You're listening to the Screeners Podcast Network.
From the big screen to the small screen and everything in between, this is the Screeners Podcast, where all media is appreciated, but none is safe.
Hey guys, and welcome back to an all-new episode of the Screeners Podcast. Very excited to have you with us. My name is Chris.
This is Chad.
And I'm Daniel.
And we are back again to talk all things media. We have a jam-packed episode, full episode for you today. We're going to be doing a review of Black Panther and also talk about our top Marvel Cinematic Universe films. But before we dive into that, I wanted to just make you guys aware, if you're listening to us, please join in on the conversation. We're on Twitter at ScreenersCast. Please let us know what you think of the show. If you have any thoughts on how we can make things better over here, we really would appreciate your input. And we're always on there. We're going to be adding new content on a regular basis. It's a really fun place to be. So follow us on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. We'd love to have you there. All right, so we're going to dive right in. I wanted to let you know as well, we've got a special guest with us, so I'm very excited. Chad is going to introduce them. But here we go. Let's review Black Panther.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
That was from the trailer of Marvel's latest outing, Black Panther. It goes without saying that Black Panther has transcended being just another comic book release and has become a cultural event, smashing box office records. I believe at the latest count, it's Monday when we're recording this, it had $193 million 4-day weekend, which was good enough, I think, for fifth all-time. Is that right, Daniel? I hear you about to correct me.
No. That's right. It already domestically, it already outgrossed Justice League at the domestic box office, which is insane.
So we're very excited to talk about it, and it got me thinking that one of the things that we wanted to do when we talked about this was not just talk about the movie, but talk about the cultural significance that Black Panther is having, the conversations that it is starting up. And so I'm very excited to introduce a friend of mine and now a friend of the show's. His name is Phil Bonaparte. How you doing, Phil?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Doing well. Phil is a longtime friend of mine. He is now living in New Jersey. He has done all kinds of stuff, people. He's a singer. He's an author. He loves movies, and he's just an extremely talented guy. And when we were talking about different people that we could have on here, we thought of Phil right away. He saw this movie opening weekend, and Phil's an African-American gentleman, and so we thought, we're super white here on the Screeners, and so we wanted to get his perspective on this film and about the cultural impact that it seems to be having. So, Phil, thanks very much for joining us tonight. We're pumped to have you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to do just very quickly is go around, and we're going to give our general thoughts and general impressions about the movie. I think probably what we'll need to do is maybe save some of the talk about the import of the movie and some of the cultural things after our general review. We'll keep it spoiler-free, and then a few minutes later, we'll jump into to a deep dive and do some spoilers. So it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Ryan Coogler. Fruitvale Station was in my top 10 the year it came out, and Creed was my number 2 film of last year. But in retrospect, the more I think about it, I really think it should have been my number 1 film. But that's a different story. And so, Phil, before we get into this, tell me a little bit about your experience with any of the films of Ryan Coogler, and then what did you think about Black Panther?
All right, well, I saw Creed, and when I went to go see it, I was definitely skeptical because, you have a Rocky movie turned into a Creed movie, and I was not sure that it would come out well, and it exceeded my expectations. And the man did it again with Black Panther. I went in expectation of it being great, but it was far better than anything that I could have ever imagined. Black Panther was amazing, not only in terms of it just being a movie for Marvel or it being a comic movie. Just overall, I thought it was a quality movie through and through. So I loved it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Daniel, let's go to you. What are your general thoughts on Ryan Coogler? I mean, he's only done 3 movies. This is his 3rd. So what are your general thoughts on Ryan Coogler and now what he's done with Black Panther?
Oh, yeah, it is well documented on this podcast that I love Ryan Coogler. Creed is way better than it had any right to be. It was just so good. So, yeah, huge fan. And Fruitvale Station as well. Fruitvale Station is really great. I actually haven't revisited it in many years, so I should probably go back and do that. But Creed is very, very nearly a perfect movie. That fact, in addition to Black Panther's incredible trailer that it had, I was insanely psyched for Black Panther. I mentioned it on our last episode. It is one of my most anticipated movies of 2018. It delivered. I agree with what Phil said. I mean, it exceeded my expectations. It's a fantastic movie. And the thing about it is, it would have been really easy for Black Panther to be just another generic Marvel movie. You know, it could have just been... I love Marvel movies, so I don't say this with any like disgust or anything, but a lot of the Marvel movies, they've started to feel the same. You can tell they're just very much in the same shape, cookie cutter kind of mold, and still good. But the thing about Black Panther is that it felt mostly different. It felt fresh in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, there are still many things that make it a Marvel movie and even has a few of the same issues that some Marvel movies have, but so much of it was different and unique. I mean, and the characters are the best part of this movie. I mean, these characters are so good. Killmonger is easily one of the best villains the Marvel Universe has ever had. I mean, and that's largely thanks to Michael B. Jordan because he's fantastic. So, and then the such strong female characters like we've never seen, definitely not in a Marvel movie, not in very many movies ever. And so all around, this is just an excellent movie. It looks great, had a great style. It's just Black Panther was great. Now, I do have a couple little issues with it that I'll kind of dive into with spoilers, but very, very minor. All around, it's a really great movie.
Okay, so strong recommendation from Phil and a strong recommendation from Daniel, which leads us now to Chris. So, Chris, tell us about your history with... Oh, that's the laugh. Okay, tell us... yeah, Chris loves everything.
Uh-huh.
So, tell us about your history with Coogler and what you thought about Black Panther.
Oh man, yeah, no, Creed was incredible. There is if you haven't seen Creed, you should definitely do it. But there is a scene in Creed, a one-shot take of a fight in a ring that is just unbelievably incredible.
Master level stuff.
Yeah, no,
doubt.
This director knows what he's doing. There's no doubt about that at all. Yeah, well, let me start with my positives first because I think that's kind of an important spot, and then I think most of my kind of things that I didn't really enjoy about this film need to be addressed in the spoiler section anyway, and I'm very interested to find out kind of where you guys land on this, because I have a feeling all of you guys are super positive on this. And so I went to go see this on Friday morning and came out of it thinking, yeah, that was a solid Marvel movie. It seemed like a kind of the average Marvel film. There are a couple of sequences, and I would say just like that sequence in Creed, there's a sequence in this film that doesn't quite live up to the visceralness of that sequence, but there's a sequence in a casino in this particular movie that is really well done. Yeah. It is fantastic. I would say that when this film is dealing with its characters, it is firing on all cylinders. I found the world building in this movie to be really incredible. Wakanda as a living place, specifically more this kind of the fact that the characters believed in the fact that this place can not only exist but also be able to achieve kind of some of the level of technology that they show on the screen. I think all that worked pretty well, and on a very good level. And I really did enjoy the character building moments. The second act of this movie I liked quite a bit, and I thought it was really well done, really well paced. The first act was kind of slow for me, and the third kind of got into a little bit of ridiculousness. So for me, it was just kind of a really well made, well done Marvel movie. There's nothing wrong with it at all, but I know that it's being praised to high heaven for being really innovative on even like a story level. And I can't wait to drive into spoilers and figure out kind of where that is and what I missed, because obviously I did miss something. I think obviously the actors and the characters and the representation that's happening here, the cast it looks unlike any other cast we've ever seen in a comic book movie, and I totally agree with that, and I think it's fantastic. But the issues for me was more of a story level. I didn't see anything that was totally fresh and new that people keep talking about. So I want to kind of dive into that with you guys. So for me, it was just kind of a really solid Marvel movie, and they did a very good job at that. But I didn't see anything rising to the level of, the best Marvel movie or the best comic book movie ever made.
Okay. Lukewarm to positive for Chris, but I think overall still positive.
Oh, no, look, if somebody asks me on the street, should I go see Black Panther? The answer is yes, you're going to have a blast.
Well, nobody's going to ask you that because everybody's seeing it.
Exactly, right, exactly.
Chris, I'm a little surprised there. I thought this movie was kind of tailor-made for the kind of thing that you like. So I'm going to probably split the difference. I'm definitely more positive than Chris and maybe just a tick more negative than Daniel. But from most of the issues, quote unquote, that I had with this movie were from a structure and technical standpoint more than anything.
Totally.
And I'm gonna talk about the negative stuff, my negative reactions first, and then I'll talk about the positive, because there's a ton of that. But I think overall, I had a hard time with the way that this movie concludes, and I'm going to keep this general. But I think it's safe to say that it ends in what was an exhilarating battle sequence. But one of the main pieces of that battle sequence was entirely CGI.
Yeah,
and it wasn't good CGI.
Totally.
And so it's it's a scenario where it's hard for me as a moviegoer at this point to be emotionally invested in those moments and in those fights, because I am essentially, and I don't want this to sound reductive, but I'm essentially watching a cartoon scenario at that moment, intercut with stuff that's happening in a different place that is less CGI heavy, that was a lot better, I think. And so it was hard for me to embrace that, and I think this movie in general has a lot of moments that are CGI that are not great, that lessen the weight and the impact that it could have had in the action. Another thing too is I think there are a couple of sets in here that just look terrible. There's a scene where certain things happen related to the passing down or the earning of kingship, and it happens by a waterfall.
Yes.
And every time it cuts to that, it looks like a cheap scene in like some side corner soundstage. And it's a shame, because what happens in those moments is actually very compelling and cool, but it looks really kind of cheap. So those are my technical nitpicks. Beyond that, I'm actually going to agree with you, Chris, too, is I feel like the first maybe 45 minutes to an hour, while it had some great moments, overall I felt the pace drug a little bit. I felt like some of the writing choices that were made were a little clunky, and honestly, the jokes and the humor that's in here landed about maybe 60% of the time positive, but then there were also some attempts at humor that just felt a little forced and not as funny, which was disappointing. But what this movie gets right is Ryan Coogler at his best, and when he's at his best, it is as good as anybody out there. And where he does his best work, in my opinion, is his work with actors and their performances. And this cast is off the charts awesome. I mean, Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, all of these characters are acting well above the kind of typical phoning it in for a comic book movie, or even the bigger than quote unquote performances that often we get from performers in a comic book movie, because you can tell they know they're in a comic book movie. Michael B. Jordan in particular has already been mentioned by Daniel as Killmonger, is a phenomenally good villain, and just a great, you understand why he's doing what he's doing, and you empathize with him, and the way that the structure of some of the things that they talk about, the central idea of whether Wakanda should have helped or not, is not a black and white answer.
Yeah.
It's actually, there are compelling arguments to be made on both sides. And so I think all of that ties together beautifully to give us a central kind of tension between these two main characters that is great. But if I'm going to be honest, my absolute favorite thing about this movie was two female performers. One was Shuri, his sister, who plays with all the gadgetry. She's essentially the James Bond Q character in this world. And then I don't want to mispronounce the name, but it's Okoye. Okoye? I don't know. Anybody got anything on that one? It's the general character. Yeah, it's the general character. She is
awesome.
She is the best thing in this movie, period. I want to see a movie just about her. She is full stop. And not to take anything away from anybody else, but every time she's on screen, she absolutely steals the scene. She is fierce and awesome, and I loved it. Loved everything about that.
Yeah, you're also, totally right. Totally right on that.
Yeah,
she was awesome.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah,
and I love. Go ahead, Phil.
I was just to clarify, when he says general, he means like military general character, not a general character.
I'm sorry, not a general character. Sorry. Thank you very much. She is not a general character by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, she's the general, the head of the King's Guard, or I'm sure they have a name, but essentially the King's Guard. And she's phenomenal. She's absolutely phenomenal. I also loved the theme, one of the themes, because, I mean, let's be honest, there's lots of thematic stuff to dig into in this movie. But one of the themes that really resonated with me was the theme of fathers and sons, and specifically the sons realizing that their fathers are not infallible and then living their lives to change or overcome past mistakes that the fathers have made, while still acknowledging the role that the father had in making them who they are to this day and being grateful for that and loving them. And I think that's a very complicated theme, but something that's explored very well in this movie, and that really resonated with me quite a bit. So overall, I am very positive on this film. I'm super positive on Ryan Coogler. I still think that Creed's his best movie so far, but I mean, for your first three films out of the gate to be Fruitvale Station, Creed, and now Black Panther, that is really fantastic stuff, and it gets me very excited for what he's doing in the future. I think that Black Panther, while I agree it has many of the shortcomings that a lot of these comic book movies have, the highs that it has, I think, are higher than what we usually get. So I'm pretty pumped.
You talked a lot about the characters. Did you? I kind of felt that Chadwick Boseman was way overshadowed by the rest of the cast. Like, Boseman's great,
agreed,
and he does perfectly fine. There's nothing bad about it, but he's almost bland compared to these other characters that are like just amazing and super unique. So that's the only kind of negative thing about the characters, is that they overshadowed the hero.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think he underplayed it, maybe intentionally, but yeah, I agree.
I think he underplayed it. It's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling, but I think that was intentional because of what is coming next for the up-and-coming movies. Especially after looking at the trailer for Infinity War, it seems as if there's going to be a lot of background regarding to this movie, Black Panther. And I think they wanted to give other people some light, so then when they do show up in the next one, we all have like some kind of, relationship with them. But, we won't find that out till later. So.
Yeah, I read an interesting article, and I haven't had time to digest it yet, which their read about his performance, about Boseman's performance as Black Panther, was that the contrast of these two characters, and Phil, give me your honest feedback on this, because I am curious, was that the subtext underneath this was it was almost like based within what's happening in the world of Wakanda and the questions that they're asking as far as helping the world and how best to help the world, is that Chadwick Boseman's character as Black Panther was more like Martin Luther King, and Michael B. Jordan's character was more like Malcolm X in the approaches that they take. I hadn't thought of it in that regard. Does that strike you in any way?
Yeah, definitely. This entire film was kind of, it was imagery in its entirety really for the Black community, and they really used that. They had to make that contrast because Michael B. Jordan's character was so on the inner city struggle side, and Boseman being the prince of a whole country, then becoming king is on the polar opposite. And in doing that, they wanted to signify those two people with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, respectively. And that's all the more reason why there was that moment in the film when Boseman's character was speaking with his father and he's talking about kingship. That moment right there was really meant to let us know as the audience what they were really trying to portray with those two characters.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now, let's go ahead and transition a little bit into kind of the cultural impact that this film is having. And I always hesitate to call a movie important, but I think it's undeniable that this movie is being held up as an important film. And so I just wanted to get you guys' general thoughts on that, on what you're seeing. Phil, in particular, your perspective is obviously very valuable here on just the talk around this film and what the kinds of things. My Twitter feed is absolutely blown up with pictures of people taking their kids to see this and tweeting about what a proud day it is, and representation obviously being a key moment for that. And I've got to be honest, this movie actually is the first time where I really, after it was over, started thinking about the fact, because I have a 5-year-old son, about I take for granted, obviously, that every superhero movie that I've ever seen growing up was full of people that looked just like me. And then I was thinking about representation with this movie and about the fact that there have been some movies with black leads in the past, but certainly a very small percentage, and what this movie may represent to them. So, Phil, am I off the mark there, or just tell me what you're hearing?
No, you're absolutely right. It's from the outside looking in, a lot of people are just thinking to themselves, this is just another movie. I don't really understand what the big deal is. When you know that you have a cast where over 90% of the actors and actresses are of dark complexion, and you actually have people from Africa and these different countries portraying these characters, and it kind of flips the access, if you will, in regards of mainstream media. It really is something that a lot of people celebrated, and it is a victory for many people, because it's just we don't get to see that. It's not something that we ever had the opportunity to experience. And the times that we did get to experience it, it was always in a negative. When you think about like Mississippi Burning, or when you think about even as along the lines of The Color Purple, these films were all based in situations in which black men and women were not capable of doing much. And now you have this film, you have a king of all things as the main character, and supported by amazing roles and individuals. So it really was a time to just celebrate the black community as a whole.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I actually, even at the screening that I went to, there were multiple. First of all, it was beautiful because there was every color and age in the theater, but there were also dozens of people that were dressed up in the full garb of Wakanda, right? The African themed stuff, and they brought their kids from maybe 4 and 5 years old all the way up to grandparent age. But it just felt like this movie was important for a lot of different reasons, because there's been, in Hollywood for years, there's been this thought that you can't open a movie wide with a cast led by people of color, and that it won't do big box office, and it won't do big box office internationally. And this movie, if anything, has started to completely obliterate that idea. It's just one of those things where this movie, regardless of our issues with it technically, it just feels like this movie is important for a lot of reasons.
It would have been really easy, even having Black Star, as Black Panther, it could have still just been another Marvel movie, I was thinking about they're going to make a Cyborg movie for DC. A movie where, yes, he's a black hero, but he's not like Black Panther, where it's set in an African country and all that. that it would be very easy for those movies to just be black star, but the rest of the movie filled with white people, right? But they didn't do that. I mean, they went all in, and so it's not just. I mean, it's just fantastic that it's completely full people of color and the culture and the style and everything. It's just they went all in and didn't shy away from it. You know, I mean, even think back to earlier Marvel movies where we have multiple heroes, Iron Man, Captain America, that have the black sidekick. And that always felt a little weird. Like, they had multiple black sidekicks. It was just kind of weird. And now, like Phil said, we have a king. It's just remarkable. So yeah, I think this is fantastic. And also, like I said in my review, the strong female characters along with it. You had that in is not just representation racially. I mean, these women are so strong. Like you guys said, the general is the best character.
Movie, man.
Yeah. So just all around, as far as representation goes, I mean, this isn't at all the end. So this is certainly a step in the right direction all around.
Yeah, this movie looks like nothing else, literally, on every single level. There is no other movie that looks like this. And that is the key part here. Whether you are, no matter what background you have, no matter what ethnicity you come from, walking into this theater, you don't feel like you're being preached to. You feel like you're sitting down, you're being entertained, but the overall message, the overall story is that people of color not only can be, like you're saying, the sidekick strong, but they can really lead the way. And that's one of the coolest things about this. It's one of the things I really want to talk to you guys about in spoilers. Wakanda is not only just an African nation, but it is the most advanced civilization on Earth. And it's just so neat to be able to see the kind of logical conclusion that takes within this. And so, yeah, no, it's wonderful to have something that looks like nothing else, and is just it's an amazing piece of entertainment, but then also is saying something in the fact that it looks the way it does, which is it's incredible. That's something that nobody else is doing right now. No, it's an incredible achievement on that level, no doubt.
And the best part of it too is that it is an entertaining film, like you said, Chris. Is that it doesn't, because there are certainly films that have social issues on their mind, and they don't work because they are poorly executed or heavy-handed. And I think one of the great things about this movie is that it's neither. Now, in places, it gets a little messagey, but overall, you can take anybody to this movie, and they're going to be thrilled and entertained and still get what this movie is putting down, I think. Any other thoughts or statements anybody wants to make before we move into spoilers?
I just loved that. I mean, and we'll talk more about this, about the premise in spoilers, of course, but I just loved that, Coogler is from Oakland. He was able to kind of weave in what's going on in America right now with this story that's largely set in Africa, and I had no idea that was going to be a thing. That the opening scene of this movie is set in LA, and that caught me off guard, largely. I had no idea that any of that was going to happen. And it sets up this really, I'm trying to watch my words carefully so I don't spoil anything, but it sets up this really debatable premise. Like with Killmonger, I was like, I mean, he was, violent and stuff, but I was on his side kind of with where he was coming from. I loved the way that they set up these themes where you can very, very easily see both sides. And so that's why I think Killmonger was such a strong villain, because he wasn't just some bland bad guy, trying to take over the Earth. I mean, there was a little bit of that too. But like I said, you see where he's coming from. I loved how gray the themes were.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's go around, and I'm going to give you 4 options. So, Phil, as our guest, you get to go first. So what I do, Phil, is I'm going to pitch it to you, and you're going to tell our audience whether they should screen this movie in the theater, whether they should rent it when it comes out, whether they should wait until they can stream it on one of their streaming services, or should they skip it altogether?
I think everyone should just go and see the film now in theaters. But I think going to the theater and experiencing it with the community, especially because this film is community heavy, that it would be best for you just to go and actually see it in person.
Daniel, same question.
Yep, I 100% agree. I mean, unless you just don't like Marvel movies, in which case you're already going to skip this one. But if you like Marvel movies, or even vaguely, this is a really, really good one. So I think you should definitely see it in the theaters. It's a superhero movie. It deserves to be seen on the big screen.
Chris?
Yeah, no, absolutely. See this in the theater. If you're going to see it on the big screen. It definitely is deserving of that.
And I agree, this film is definitely theater worthy, and I think that it would be great wherever you watch it, but I definitely think it's theater worthy, and you should watch it in the theater. So with that, let's move to spoilers for Black Panther.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
There's so many places it would never occur to Hawk to hide. However, the reason the Führers brought me off my Alps in Austria and placed me in French cow country today is because it does occur to me. Because I'm aware what tremendous feats human beings are capable of once they abandon dignity.
And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. He's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there and all that dark and all that cold. And I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. And then I woke up.
All right, so where I wanted to start spoiler discussion is right where you just left off, Daniel, where we talked about the conflicting themes in that early scene there in Los Angeles. So we see that Killmonger's dad, played by Sterling K. Brown, has stolen technology, I guess you would say, to weaponize, to help in the fight against oppression and drugs and things that they're encountering in the early 90s there in Los Angeles. And so that's certainly politically hot, for sure, to take that stance. But then what happens is King T'Chaka shows up, the younger version, and actually kills him to stop that from happening, which, by the way, in retrospect, this is a small, minor nitpick, but I feel like there was a lot of things they could have done not to kill that guy. Like, knock the gun out of his hand, or like, tie him up, or like, but he's your brother, and you just like put your claws in his heart, like right away. Really? That seemed kind of brutal, kind of harsh. But I understand we got to have a movie too, and they've got to have that conflict, and it's certainly motivating for Killmonger later on in the film. But it does set up this interesting dichotomy where it essentially is asking us for the rest of the film, whose side are you on? Should they have intervened and should they help? And it mirrors the same kind of journey that Black Panther is going through with his own father, who made the choice to isolate. And there's all kinds of political connotations in there. There's the wall. They mention a wall specifically. They literally talk about, but if you let in the outsiders, they bring their problems with them. And then they have the contrary point to that. And so there's lots of things that are politically charged in there.
Totally.
And from a story standpoint, you have the father who has made one choice that the son does not agree with, and it all ties in together. So I'm just curious, now that we can talk full spoilers, do you think that was an effective way to do this? Was it too much, or did it actually work? Phil, let's start with you.
All right, so I'm going to nerd out for a quick second to give a little backstory for it. Killmonger, actually, and his dad, they originated in Wakanda in the comics. So they took advantage of them wanting to make this their own and actually put Killmonger in Oakland and never having seen Wakanda and have his father being killed in that to propel the story and to make it so politically heavy, as you were just talking about, Chad, which is why that was. But in doing that, I really do believe it helped Although the whole killing thing was a lot to do for such a small situation, it definitely I feel as if it was needed to help propel what it is, not only what they wanted to talk about in the film, but also to help the character of T'Challa, with him having to figure out whether he wanted to open Wakanda and its resources to the entire world or to keep it secluded as is. Here again, as I was talking earlier, I really feel as if they needed that to happen for the upcoming films, because in the trailer for Infinity War, this is just speculation, but it really looked like that main fight is going to happen in Wakanda. So in order for that to happen, he would have had to open up open the country up to everybody. So then that could be a place to help protect the world in and of itself. So I think it was important. I understand how it looked. It was a bit much, but I think it was necessary.
So Big Phil with the foreshadowing to potential Infinity War tie together. Okay, I can see that for sure.
What I love is that we don't know that that is Killmonger's dad. I don't know how long, but for quite a bit of the movie, they actually kind of don't touch on that opening scene for quite some time. We almost are either forgetting about it or just kind of not sure how that ties in, other than the whole should Wakanda intervene, should they not in the world. But once that reveal of when we discovered that's Killmonger's dad, I mean, that was awesome. It really gives weight to his story. You understand where he's coming from. You really, I really understood where Killmonger's coming from. I, of course, wasn't on board for him killing everybody, but I was like, he's not wrong, He's not wrong about they have all this life-saving technology. I was when they healed, what's Martin Freeman's character's name? He gets shot.
Yeah.
Everett
yes.
Ross.
So he gets shot in the back. He should die, and they save his life. And I was like, that they need to share this technology. I mean, and so I was kind of on Killmonger's side for quite a bit, and obviously they go back and forth quite a bit. So I thought the themes were handled really well.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and because I want to talk a little bit about some of the problems I had with the film, like specific-wise, I think everything we've already talked about, the characters, the world building, all that kind of stuff is really, this thing is dripping with style. But a lot of the plot just kind of bugged me. Like you were just saying, the quick killing of Killmonger's dad was kind of one of the things. The fact that Michael B. Jordan kind of goes missing for like a quarter of this movie kind of bugs me a little bit. That we get I would almost call it like a bait and switch with Andy Serkis's character. I found a lot of that just unnecessary, honestly. Like I wish we'd have spent more time with Michael B. Jordan's character of Killmonger, and I wish it wouldn't have ended up in a CGI silly fest fight on this train bridge thing.
Yeah, that's the worst part of the movie.
It boggles my mind because, like you guys were saying, man, holy cow! Like I mean, this is my whiteness showing. I didn't think about the connection between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Why didn't we explore that even more? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be like direct, but like, holy cow! Like, if we're saying something, it just the Marvelness, I guess. The MCU-ness kind of seeped in too much for me for this, and that bums me out to no end. The biggest thing that bothered me, and you guys feel free to tell me what you thought about this, didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I guess they just needed to do it narratively, is that Wakanda is supposed to be the most advanced civilization on Earth. The women have leadership roles. People are treated equally. They have technology. Everything is clean. It is a utopia. I mean, I think you guys would probably agree. But the way that they choose who their leader is going to be, and the crux of this movie is by fighting and seeing who the strongest person is on a waterfall. That just seems so completely anti to everything else that the Wakandan people would stand for. I just didn't understand why that was still a thing. You even have like the younger characters like rolling their eyes at the first time that we see that tradition, and perhaps maybe that's all it's supposed to be, is just a tradition. Everybody says not a problem, no, not a problem, but still, it seemed to me such a brutal thing for such an advanced society to decide who their leader's going to be.
Well, they're also deciding who's going to be Black Panther. So I think that's part of it. I get where you're coming from. I do. I understand that. I think it's just the tradition of it, and the fact that whoever becomes king is also this great protector, like physically, has to physically defend the country, so I don't know.
In every other aspect of their civilization, they are well beyond fighting each other to choose who the leader is. And if it's Black Panther, so are we saying that Black Panther, up until that he did this, was his like old dad that got blown up at the UN?
I mean, the thing with that is just the fact that and this is like, just to forewarn you, this is definitely African American culture heavy. A lot of people that are quote unquote black in our society are not really black. They're either, a lot of them are actually first generation in the States. Like even me myself, my dad, he came from the islands, and I'm first generation here, and we're pretty affluent family, but we still do a lot of traditional things because we try to keep the main thing, and we don't want to lose our heritage. And I think that is what they were representing with Wakanda, because especially those that are from the African countries, they are all about their culture and not losing that component to them, and they do everything they can possible to excel. But then they still take the time necessary to go back and recognize the things necessary, so then they don't lose who they are, because they find that as their strength, and the reason why they're capable of excelling so greatly is because they are always fighting for something more. I mean, in all honesty, though, you can kind of tell in that scene, like you said, like the kids in there were rolling their eyes and stuff, even down to the actual fighting. When the 5 tribes were doing it, like most of the tribes said no. And then even when the tribes from the mountainside came, it wasn't really a death match. It was a fight till someone said that they're done fighting. Although it's created so then you either yield or die, they don't usually go that far. And I'm sure that they haven't gone that far from generations until Michael B. Jordan's character decided to slide in. But here again, it's really just about sustaining their culture so then they don't lose that in spite of all the technology and everything else that they are capable of creating.
It just seemed weird for me that was the way that they determine who their leader is going to be. But I mean, if it didn't bother you guys, that's cool.
It's like a very specific thing to be bothered by.
Well, it's the crux. It's the crux of this entire movie. It's how Michael B. Jordan becomes. It's how Killmonger becomes the king. If it wasn't for that, this movie there wouldn't be anything about it. Because basically what happens is, and this is the issue, is that Michael B. Jordan's evil character is able to kill the T'Challa, the Black Panther, throw him over a waterfall, and everybody else just has to follow him into darkness.
That's
crazy.
It's because he's of royal bloodline.
Exactly. It's not just that anybody who overthrows him is going to be king. It's that he had a rightful claim to the throne.
All right, that's fine. If it didn't bother you guys, that's fine. No worries. We're spending too much time on it.
But
it did not bother us.
I agree with what Chad was saying. The waterfall itself did not look good at all. But the choreography and fighting of those scenes were some of the best in the movie. I thought the fight scenes at the waterfall were awesome.
Yeah, I think the fighting in general in this movie is really good, specifically in the last battle scene where the I don't know how to describe them, but the female guard goes against the male guard, and the anytime that they were above ground, it was magnificent. And when Black Panther and Killmonger fell down into the train station, I audibly sighed and was like, "Oh man, I wish they would have stayed above ground."
Yeah, totally.
Everything above ground was great, and then it turned into this big CGI fest, which is a real bummer.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and then also the wonderful CGI rhinos were also quite amazing.
Yeah, but that comes from the comic. The Black Panther fighting
I understand. I understand.
That's kind of a callback, which I think is cool. It's hard, but yes, point taken.
I understand.
But overall, I think that it sounds like we're overall very positive on the film. Chris has some gripes, and I do too. To be honest with you, I didn't walk out like super home run, but it was little dumb nitpicky things like that are just, I'm conditioned at this point wanting to keep it as real as you can, and when it turns into a CGI fest, for me it just loses a lot of its momentum.
I think I'm just over the Marvel form again. Like, I just felt like the Marvelness of this film, unfortunately for me, overtook the uniqueness of it. And I'm sure for many people the uniqueness is in the forefront, and the Marvelness can I just be put on the back burner, because that's fine. But it just, for me, it just kept coming up, and I was like, guys, get out of the way and let
I agree with you with that one, because I felt the same way. We were talking about earlier about like the comic relief moments. Like they put it so heavy in the beginning of the film. I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is Thor Ragnarok all over again. I can't deal with it. But but it was, if that, and other components too, like some of the CGI just wasn't that good. And there are other components that I wish didn't happen, and it was more back to just the story that they were creating. But it's tough when they have to encompass an entire universe and everything else, and I remember leaving the film and thinking to myself, like, I was saying to myself, like, the unbiased black man in me wants to not say this was as amazing a film as I felt, but but then the biased black man in me was like, oh my gosh, this film is so amazing, I can't help myself, just to be honest. But but like what you're saying, I honestly felt as if a lot of the Marvel-ness of everything just kind of got in the way, and it could have been way better if that didn't have to be such a big component of this film.
And I agree. I think those points are valid. I think part of the reason it's so good is because it's the best. It's a great entry in the series. It's a fantastic Marvel movie, and so I think we're all getting a little over the Marvel formula, but it's still a formula that works. And so I think it excels in the genre that it's in, and that genre has some inherent issues, has some problems. It delves too deeply into CGI. I don't think that any Marvel movie is going to really surpass that at this point. So that's why it's still, there are things you just have to suck up when you go to a Marvel movie and enjoy the good.
Well, it's been a great discussion, guys. And before we go into our top three, just want to give everybody a chance to give their final thoughts. I think for me, it just did my heart good, or does my heart good, to know that this is a very small first step, actually a pretty big first step, to allowing representation in these kinds of movies. Very much like what Phil said, the pure, good, heroic nature of this kind of film to be led by people of color, because representation is important, and these young people can see themselves on the big screen, and I don't think we can undersell how important that is with this film in particular. So I'm pumped about that and what is to come.
If you're going to watch the movie for the first time or a second time or however many times, I would challenge everyone just to kind of look at it from perspective from the black community, because there is a lot of imagery with it. We were just talking about the general in the army, like that is full representation of how young black men are without fathers and are surrounded by strong black women, or how like the last ending scene is meant to make people feel uncomfortable because that black on black violence is what happens in our society today through and through. But just go back and watch the film, or watch the film for the first time, and really take that time to think about the things that they are trying to say that they aren't blatantly saying.
Beautifully said. All right, guys, with that, we're now going to move in to our top three.
3, 2, 1. The top three.
All right, so for our top three today, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We just talked about Black Panther, which is the 18th Marvel film, which seems insane that there are that many movies in a single franchise. They're all in a universe that connects. That is really just insane. So, because there's so many movies in that franchise, we're going to rank our top three Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, okay? So our top three Marvel MCU movies. But before we get into that, we're also, since we're talking about Black Panther, I want to know where that places on your guys' lists. As you rank the Marvel movies, where does Black Panther place, okay? So we're going to start with Chad. Chad, where does Black Panther rank on your list of Marvel movies?
Well, obviously it's still fresh because I've just seen it a day ago. But the best that I can figure for me out of, you said how many there are there? 18?
18.
Yeah, I think for me, it is going to be currently number 4 out of 18. So really high up there, not quite in my top 3, but very close. I went back and forth between number 3 and Black Panther quite a bit. And what going through this list made me realize is that while a lot of these movies are good, they really are just kind of good, and they're not great. Yeah, so I think Black Panther does a lot of things a lot better than most of the Marvel films. So for me, it's number 4.
Yeah, all right, great. Can't argue with that. All right, Chris, where does Black Panther place on your list?
19.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Because Chris hates black people. I said it.
You ain't got to worry about it, man.
All right, sweet. Call me out like that. No, for me, honestly, again, here's the thing that I've been saying this entire time is that I enjoy Marvel films. These are my kind of movies. And so I was putting this list together and realizing just how many good films of that genre, like you were saying, Daniel, there are. And honestly, when I was putting it together and looking at the stars that I've given it, for me, it lands right at the 10 spot for me, is Black Panther, right at number 10. So literally, I'd said it's an average. I felt like it's an average Marvel film, and that's exactly where I placed it. Is right there in the middle of the list.
Okay, all right. And Phil, where does Black Panther place for you?
I know I'm gonna get into a lot of trouble for this, but it's Black Panther for me right now. Being fresh is at number 3.
All right, number 3.
How
Crack the
dare
top
you?
3.
How dare you, Phil?
Awesome. And for me, mine is the same as Chad's. It's right at number 4 for me. I definitely don't argue with the reasoning. As I was looking at the whole list, there's definitely a lot that blend together, that are all very good, just kind of the same level of good, but not great. So they all just kind of blended together there. But there's a few that kind of rose to the top that I knew these needed to be in the top tier of my list. So we are going to go with our top 3 Marvel movies. All right, so Chad, we already know what your number 4 is. What is your number 3 pick?
My number 3 is the original Avengers. And when it first came out, I think part of what makes this movie still stand up for me is that it was the uniqueness at the time that it was released. The miracle of getting all of these characters together in one film made that cinematic experience just a mountaintop kind of experience in the theater when it came out. Now, looking back at it through today's lens, I don't know that it stands up as well, but it's still really very solid. And I went back and forth between this one and Black Panther, but overall, I think the Avengers for me is number 3.
Awesome. Great pick. Okay, Chris, what's your number 3 Marvel movie?
For me, this is obviously a personal pick, but it's the one that started it all. For me, it's Iron Man.
Is it better to be feared or respected? And I say, is it too much to ask for both? I humbly present the Jericho.
Your eyes are red. Few tears for your long-lost boss?
Tears of joy. I hate job hunting.
Yeah, vacation's over.
Welcome home, sir.
Put up the scanner, will you? What happened over there?
I had my eyes open. I want to protect the people I put in harm's way.
A man with a dozen of these can rule all of Asia.
Yeah.
I still think that movie is just fantastic. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal and the fact that this kicked off a larger universe, something that had never been done before. The idea of a post-credit scene had never really come up, wasn't a big deal until this film, and it just expanded the universe. It went from being a fun, really well-made action flick to opening the floodgates to a completely different way of making movies. And so for me, Iron Man, it was fun, it was entertaining, and I enjoyed that thing quite a bit. So Iron Man's number 3 for me.
Nice. The one that started it all. Nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, Phil, we already know what your number 3 pick is. So I guess we're going to skip you this time.
Awesome.
unless you want to review Black Panther.
Well,
yeah.
Tell us what you thought. I will say that my number 4 is actually the Avengers, and I was stuck like Chad was. I was stuck between 3 and 4, between Black Panther and the original Avengers and Avengers. The original Avengers is my number 4.
Awesome.
Okay, good, solid.
Yeah, definitely a great pick. All right, and for me, I think I am going to get crap for my number 3 pick. All right, so I'm just going to come right out and say it. It is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Shut your mouth.
Whoa.
Shut your mouth, Dan.
Volume 2?
Just let it out. Just let it out.
Can I edit out the Volume 2
just
part? Because I know that's not right.
Holy crap. Really?
Let it all out. Yes.
You're going to have to repent after that
yes.
one.
Let it all out.
Nice. Look, okay, so here's how it happened. I was looking at my list. I initially had Guardians 1 up there as my number 3. And then if I'm being honest with myself, I really love Volume 2 even better than Guardians 1. And so I swapped them. So yeah, I think Guardians 2 took everything that we loved about the first one and just kind of cranked it up. It's got the great humor that was kind of different than the other Marvel humor we had so far. It has the great team, the great characters, and it's just a fantastic film that I had a really great time with. So you all can take your opinions and keep them to
Millennials.
yourself. So
Everything that you've just said is false.
No, I enjoyed Volume 2 as well, but number 3 just seems super high. But that's fine, man. I'm glad you enjoyed that movie. That's great.
thank you. I appreciate that. So that was my number 3 pick. All right, so we are going to go back to Chad. Chad, what is your number 2 MCU movie?
My number 2 pick is Guardians of the Galaxy
Volume 2.
Period. Yeah, no, it's not Volume 2. Volume 2 was worse than 1 in every conceivable way.
We arrested these 5 on Xandar. Check out the rap sheets.
Drax, a.k.a. the Destroyer. Since his wife and family were killed, he's been on a rampage across the galaxy in his search for vengeance. Gamora, soldier, assassin, wanted on over a dozen counts of murder. Rocket, wanted on over 50 charges of vehicular theft and escape from lockup.
What the hell?
Groot has been traveling recently as Rocket's personal houseplant / muscle.
Peter Jason Quill. He's also known as Star-Lord.
Who calls him that?
Himself, mostly. He's wanted largely on charges of minor assault, public intoxication, and fraud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know how this machine worked.
Guardians of the Galaxy for me was a breath of fresh air when it came out. It was the first time that, for me anyway, that it felt like the MCU was trying to do something different and break the mold. They made this cool, retro, really funny film that had a great soundtrack, and it was number 2 because it was just a joy from top to bottom.
Awesome. Can't argue with that. All right, Chris, what is your number 2 pick?
Yeah, my number 4 was Guardians, just so you guys know. But yeah, no, I love that movie as well. No, my number 2 is The Avengers.
What do we do?
We get ready.
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. So when we needed them, they could fight the battles that we never could. Gentlemen, what are you prepared to do?
No offense, but I don't play well with others.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that away. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Just for all the reasons that have already been stated, it was incredible to see these small, not small, but these individual movies that had happened beforehand culminate into a bigger plot story and everything connecting. It was cool to see them actually pull that sucker off. So yeah, Avengers for me.
Nice. Yep. Awesome. And Phil, what's your number 2 MCU
My
movie?
number 2 MCU movie is actually Captain America Civil War. And the reason for that is because I just did not expect them to do that. Everyone tries to keep it all positive and rah-rah, and they flipped it and made it realistic. They made it as close to the comics as possible, even threw in Spider-Man just to make it even better for us all. And I was just really surprised that they did that. Liked how they set it all up for the upcoming films as well. So yeah, Civil War is my number 2.
Nice. We didn't even talk about in our Black Panther review the way he was set up in Civil War, and also
it's a prequel.
Yeah, and how they don't really address the Winter Soldier being there really until kind of the post-credit scene. But anyway,
Civil War was my number 5. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's very good movie.
It's my number 5 as well. Yeah.
All right, and so my number 2 pick is, it's already been mentioned multiple times, Iron Man 1. Man, that's a movie that changed Hollywood. I mean, it completely changed the way Hollywood works, or at least started the change. Now everything is about a shared universe and all these different movies connecting. Everything's a universe now, and that just wasn't the case back then, and when
and I'm not sure that was necessarily a good thing.
Well, absolutely, but it, for better or worse, it changed Hollywood, and so and beyond that, it's just a fantastic movie, and it has remained one of the most grounded Marvel movies, and it's fantastic. So Iron Man is my number 2 pick. We are to our number 1, our favorite MCU movies. All right, Chad, what's your favorite?
It's no secret, I've said it before. It's Captain America: Winter Soldier. And that is because the Russo brothers, who directed Civil War and who are directing the upcoming Avengers, took this premise of these superheroes and then put it straight into a thriller, a spy thriller, espionage film where the action was grounded and the hand-to-hand combat was magnificent, and everything about the construction of the movie was thrilling and real in a way that had not yet been achieved in most of the MCU movies. So for me, this is a clear number 1, and it's not even close. I've watched it maybe 7-8 times, and every time I watch it, I still get excited and caught up with just the filmmaking and the craft. So Winter Soldier it is.
All right. Who would have known the Russo brothers, of all people, would deliver such a good movie? Nice. Great pick. All right, Chris, I have a guess. Is your number 1 the same as Chad's?
It sure is.
Nice.
Yes.
It's hard to deny it being such an amazing... Because I really do think it's not only an amazing Marvel movie, it is a good movie. Just flat out, period. So, yeah, Winter Soldier, number 1 for me.
Awesome. Very good. All right, Phil.
It is definitely Winter Soldier, though.
I joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to protect people.
Captain,
To build a better world
sometimes means tearing the old one down. And that makes enemies.
Are you ready for the world to see you as you really are? You look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
You need to keep both eyes open.
I was kind of nervous to hear what y'all both were thinking, because I was like, they're not gonna say Winter Soldier, but you did, and I'm glad you did. Just like what Chad was saying, and then the action scenes, man. Those were raw fighting sequences that you can just tell that, they looked like people. It was like in real life, if you saw some cats doing that, that you're dead in like 2 seconds. So the reality of it all, the espionage, just how the plot twists and turns and everything was just, especially because I knew who the Winter Soldier was reading the comics. I still was like, wait, who is the Winter Soldier? Like, are they really going to put it this way? And I didn't know until it finally happened. So I loved it. Winter Soldier was fire.
Nice. Well, then it sounds like I am the outlier here. I'm the only one whose favorite Marvel movie is not Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Lame.
That's a fantastic movie. So for me, it's already been talked about, but The Avengers. The Avengers is my favorite Marvel movie. It, I kind of disagree with what Chad said about it, that it doesn't quite live up to the excitement of when it was released. I think it still does. It's still just, it's incredible to watch this culmination of all these characters coming together in a way that hasn't been replicated since. Avengers 2 was sucked, and so Civil War was great as well, but it just seeing all these characters in this universe come together in exactly the way that they intended it to happen. And on top of that, it's just fun. When they're all fighting in New York, it's just incredible to see all those characters coming together, fighting, one of the best villains that they had, Loki. So all around, it's just a great movie. So that's my number 1.
I'll let you finish, but. So what I'm hearing is that Winter Soldier's not even in your top 5? Is that true?
I honestly can't remember what my number 5 is off the top of my head.
Oh, man. All right.
It might not be.
This is invalid. Your list is invalid.
So, hang on, though. Can we just know what everybody's bottom barrel list is? I want to know what everybody's least favorite Marvel cinematic movie is. Because I think Chad and I would probably agree on this, too, right? Maybe not. Maybe you think a movie is worse than it. For me, it's Iron Man 3. There's no doubt that that's the worst movie in the entire MCU. Like, so much further out than any of the others.
No.
I don't think Iron Man 3 is worse than Thor.
It's between Thor,
World.
Dark World and Iron Man 3 for me. I'm not too sure. I have to go back and look at them, but Iron Man 3 was kind of trashy. Thor, Dark World was trashy. It's
Thor
pretty
Dark
bad.
World's pretty bad.
Easily the worst. And then Avengers Age of Ultron's next up for me.
I think, guys, a good case could be made that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Shut up.
No.
Not as bad as those two.
Okay.
No, jeez. No,
and I think Iron Man
you're
2 is far worse than Iron Man 3.
Oh, dude.
Far
Okay.
worse.
Moving on.
Agree to disagree.
That's okay. You know what? You can come on the show anytime.
Oh, my God.
You're listening to the Screeners Podcast.
All right, so those are our favorite and some of our least favorite MCU movies. Great franchise, great movies, lots of great movies to choose from. All right, Phil, thank you so much for joining us for our review of Black Panther. It's great
Glad
to have
be
you
here, man. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
So that about does it for this episode. Thanks for joining us as always. Like Chris said at the top of the show, don't forget to reach out to us on social media, on Twitter at ScreenersCast, on Facebook, search the Screeners Podcast. We want to hear from you guys, hear what you think, hear what you thought of Black Panther, if you loved it as much as us, or if you are more on Chris's end of things.
Hey!
All right, join us next time as we review Annihilation. We'll see you then.
And that's a wrap. You've heard what the screeners had to say. Now you be the critic. Head over to screenerspodcast.com and let us know what you think. See you next time.